I was born by before the internet.
All right, Gary here. Welcome to Book Mob episode 31. Today I'm going to be talking about a great book I read during the week by the Israeli author Ron Leshem, and his book Beaufort. This English version was released in 2007, and the Hebrew version was released in 2005. Now, this book centers around a group of a platoon of young commandos run by, and it's told through the eyes of their commander, Liraz Librati. And it's set in the year 2000 at the end of the occupation of Southern Lebanon by the IDF. They had been there since, the Israeli army had been there since 1982, and by 2000 Israelis had a gutful of the war, of men and women dying, and it was time to pull out. So this story centers around the lives and the experiences of the commander's troops. Now, the commander, Liraz Librati, is a man cut from a very different cloth as to the young men that he is leading. And I see a lot of parallels between what Ron Leshem was saying in his novel about how there is a division inside the IDF where young people basically have grown up in a different world to their parents and grandparents. So the main protagonist, who is the commander, is a warrior in the sense that he has been fighting for much longer than the young people that he is now commanding. And also it goes into in-depth ideas about the different types of Israelis, the different opinions, the different political viewpoints. And at the same time, all of them come together because they've been, ordered by their government to stand guard at the Beaufort fort. And in this period in the year 2000, after nearly 18 years of occupation of Lebanon, no one wants to be the last soldier wounded or killed fighting in a occupation that is not basically liked or wanted by the majority of the Israeli citizens. Now, the difference between not wanting and performing your duty is demonstrated greatly in this book. I mean, there are characters who are talking to their commander and basically trying to tell the commander that we shouldn't be here. We should not. What are we doing in Lebanon? Why are we here? But they continue to perform their duties, and it's the tragedy of young people filled with opportunities for the future who are getting killed, who are getting badly wounded, and at the same time questioning their own sense of Zionism. I guess they want to be free Jews. They want to live in Israel, but at the same time, the costs of Israel means that they are forced to defend their borders. And this film, in fact, there was a film made about this book, and it was released, I think, in 2007, and it was nominated for an Academy Award. Okay, back to the book. Now, these young men are forced to sit still inside these bunkers, just observing what is going on in front of them. The ambushes, the operations have been called off. So basically, the young men never get to see the enemy. They never get to fight the enemy, but they're under constant barrage of rockets and missiles. And occasionally a missile strikes the compound. And some of the ways that Ron Leshem describes the horrible sort of effects of a missile striking a compound for these young men that you get to know throughout the book, and when they die or are maimed, there is a sense of loss there. Now, if you've been in the military, and I've been in the army, there is a sense of I do understand the book, because one of the criticisms about Beaufort was the sort of the dialogue, the jargon, and the language used by the soldiers, and also their misogyny and the way they talk about sex and the way they cling together in these horrible situations. And I have read critics, that was really hard to follow. But I think Ron Leshem really found a beautiful way of expressing multiple voices, Israeli voices, of young men in the IDF who are fighting in a so-called war where most of them don't want to take part in it. But again, this is the difference, is that they don't want to take part in it, and they do because of duty, because of love of country, because of patriotism, because of their parents, because of their grandparents. And don't forget that the separation between, and this is in year 2000, I just need to say again, the idea that young men in the year 2000 were already looking abroad. Like a lot of the young men are going to leave Israel when they get out of the army, and they're going to go travel. Some want to go to South America, some want to go to the States. So their young lives at that point are directed out of Israel. Not all of them, but a couple of characters. And obviously the tragedy is that some of those characters are horribly killed or maimed. And the actual commander, Levi, he's an extremely professional, hard-bitten, tough soldier. He's risen through the ranks. He did his national service, stayed in the military, rose up through the ranks as an infantryman, became a sergeant, and then went to officer training, and now subsequently he's an officer looking after 13 men. So the story ebbs and flows between each character, their girlfriends, their dreams, their fears, just basic things on how they communicate using their own made-up language. They have different words for things. It is explained quite well in the book. And again, another criticism I read was someone saying they couldn't understand. They found it difficult to sort of travel, because a lot of the language is used by these men is made up for their own circumstances. But I find that extremely important, and I find it, it's interesting to see how Ron has created a story. Not an original story in the sense, you've got your band of brothers. Through popular culture and war films and novels, but mainly films, people get this sense of brotherhood, of working together, of loving one another, being torn apart by the tragedy of war. But Ron has kind of done a very, very sort of smart job of bringing alive on paper these characters, and you do get to know them. You do read going, I hope this person doesn't get killed, or I hope this person doesn't get maimed. Now, Ron Leshem himself, I don't think he ever served in Lebanon. He was in the IDF. He was a soldier in the intelligence corps. And I think he says in the afterword that he didn't see, personally, he didn't serve with men like Levi and the 13 young men who are sent to the castle to, observe what's going on in Southern Lebanon. But he certainly must know a lot of people who served in the IDF and saw action, and who probably shared a lot of private stories with him. And because they ring true. The book rings true. And I highly recommend that you give it a read. Obviously, like I said, there was the movie made, but I highly recommend reading this book, because it does a beautiful job of creating a story, a narrative, because it's not based on fact. The story itself, the background narrative of the occupation of Southern Lebanon, yeah, well, that's true. And he has created an ensemble of young men in the year 2000 who are basically counting down the days until the Israeli government says, all right, enough is enough, let's go. So there's this sort of tearing down of time versus the upscale of the Hezbollah terrorists, who are obviously very aware that the Israelis are leaving, and they can't wait to get in, and so they are harassing the IDF on a daily basis with rockets and missiles, and the young men are just sitting there waiting for the orders, but also they're getting on with their lives, their frontline lives. You know, they live in concrete bunkers, and even going to the toilet to take a shit is a risk, because, you know, if you run out, a rocket could just fall and kill you or maim you at any second of the day. So there's this constant tension in the book about how they are living a normal life, as normal as can be under those conditions, talking to each other, sharing jokes, eating food, and also the sense that every one of them has dreams and a future. They all have futures. And I guess, in a sense, this story, I read it after the current events from October 7, 2023, and then the subsequent bombing, and now the ground invasion going on in Gaza at this moment. A difference is that in 2000 they were up against Hezbollah, and obviously in 2023 it's fighting Hamas. So again, I want to stress that it's a story about young men in the army, in the military. They're tough guys, but they are not hardened soldiers. They haven't been fighting. They haven't been in combat. Their leader is a combat veteran, and he's in a totally different level. And it's hard for him to understand when he hears his young soldiers complain or show fear, or, you know, they say things like, "Why are we here? I don't know why we're here." And that is a big thing. And he can't stand these young people. Like, he's so fully bought into his government's plan, and he finds it very, very difficult to communicate. In fact, he finds it difficult to communicate with those beneath him, as well as his commanders, because he's noticed a big cultural change in the IDF, where the idea of killing and fighting has been taken out of the military, and they've just basically been put there in the front line to act as a stopgap. And just like in Gaza with the walls and the fences and the borders, Lebanon, the southern Lebanon, where the Israelis had occupied, the same argument was that, we've got to be this far into Lebanon to create a buffer between the border of Israel. And yet at the same time, all they does is they just spend 18 years of killing each other. And when they fight, and I mean, obviously history, you'll know, the Israelis did retreat from or abandon the front line in southern Lebanon, and the tension created by Ron Leshem when he talks about how they slipped out. It kind of reminds me about the same way the Anzacs left Gallipoli, the hills of Gallipoli, when they slowly peeled away and using tactics to pretend that they were still at the front. So there's this idea that military withdrawal is a common theme in fiction and non-fiction, and it creates tension, and it creates a sense of loss, because you realize that all the young people throughout the book who are talking about, why are we here? Let's go home. Let's finish this. I don't want to die. I don't want to get blown apart. I mean, one of the characters, a very main character, gets his head blown off, and the way it's fictionalized in this great book, it's just stunningly simple in its ugliness. That, you know, the soldier, he was, I won't say who it is, but he's quite an amusing character. And then suddenly he gets because the author talks about how his body fell down without a head, and there's a scene where they go and look for his head, that they figured might have, once when he got blown up, they figured that his head must have got blown over the front of the compound and rolled into the rocky valley below. And in this one scene, the whole camp disobeys orders and climbs out over the compound and exposes themselves to Hezbollah's fire in order to find their friend's head. I mean, it's a ghoulish, but when you read the book, you can see that whole thing just shining through, that these, it's mateship, friendship, through struggles. Even though characters hate each other, they fight like normal soldiers. They still, there's always a point where they drop their personal prejudices and come together. And I guess the metaphor, this young man is killed by a missile in his bunker, and the simple, it's the way that the characters talk about his head that got blown off and must have rolled down the rocky hill into the creek below. They do it in such a matter-of-fact way that you realize, wow, if you go through these experiences and then you return back to your normal everyday life, whatever's normal in Israel, I don't know, but an amazing book. And like I said, they made a film about it that was nominated for an Oscar. And at the end of the day, Israel is back then. One of the comments in the book is that Israel is wary of this incessant war. Israeli men and women in the IDF carry out their duties, and even though many of them would rather, be sitting on a beach or working in their jobs or being with their families, they still pick up their weapons and they follow orders. And I suppose it's easy for people all around the world, and this also goes for young men fighting in Hamas and Hezbollah, is that they're told what to do by a bunch of old men, and they stand and fight and die and get maimed for maybe reasons that in 20 years will make sense, but right at the point of their service, it doesn't make sense. They can't see why they have to be there. So it's a very, very disturbing and thick sort of character look at young men. And I know that there are females, but in this book it's just men. The men in the front, they're all young men, 13 men. And so basically, Israel is in 2000 is weary of this war and decide to pull out. Now it's 2023 now, and one can think, well, I guess sooner or later they'll pull out of Gaza, but are they going to go through another occupation of Gaza that's going to last for 6 years and thousands of people are going to get killed? Who knows? For us who don't live there, we just see the media and we see the propaganda on both sides. We never know what's true. And that's why I love fiction. Because fiction, in Beaufort, this great book, you are lost in the lives of the characters, of the men. You get to know them, the language, the banter between them, and seeing the world through the eyes of their commander, Levi. You get a sense of a society that's fractured between duty and rights and moral and values, and at the same time, they're all still standing there with doing their duty. And I wonder if this war or this sort of incessant war in the Middle East will ever end in any way that makes people live in peace. I don't think so. But again, the whole idea that young men question the war. In fact, I think I remember there was a term, I haven't heard it for a long time, but in Israel, there were young men and women who were called refuseniks. I think that's the term, refusenik, look it up. I think it's a term that means soldiers who had served in this is the early 2000s in Gaza, had decided that they weren't going to serve the IDF in Gaza. They were going to serve in the IDF on the borders, but a lot of young men and women in the military said, no more. So there was this term called refuseniks. I think that's right. I'll look it up later, but I think that term is right. And again, that demonstrates what the book is also, what Ron Leshem's book is trying to say, is that you take young people, you bring them up in a society where they go to school, they go to university, they follow the values and morals of their family. And even though they've got their own minds, they go up to, in this case, like I said, Southern Lebanon, and they go to Beaufort, and they stand there and they wait to die and to be maimed, and no one can tell them why they're there. There's no real answer, other than, we're protecting our borders. But the soldiers always question. They go, well, that's not what I'm after. Why are we here? Why are we getting killed? And one must remember that this at this time in the war in 2000 in Southern Lebanon, the Jews weren't actually, the IDF, sorry, I should say, weren't actually doing operations on a grand scale. That had all been tapered back, and basically it was a stop and wait to see what happened in the future. So really fantastic book. I highly recommend it. Great characters, well written, gritty, nasty, enlightening, and also, it's filled with love, despite the topics and the subject matter. But a wonderful book, and I'm now going to see if I can find a fiction book that I can read that tells a story from the point of view of a soldier in Hamas or Hezbollah at the time. I just want a fiction book. I don't want I don't want non-fiction books, because basically those stories are being told every day. But in literature, you get expressions of thoughts and feelings and truth. This book does not turn around and say all Israeli Defense Force members are for exactly what is going on. No, that's bullshit. It shows young people questioning their place in the world, and some of them pay the worst, the final price. They get killed, get their heads blown off, get their arms blown off, and then have to go back and try and sort of justify why they can't get... because even in Israel, soldiers, in this book, he talks about soldiers who come back without arms or without legs are sort of not hidden, but it is a reminder of what they're doing, and people don't like to see it. Anyway, so thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the experience, and I highly recommend Beaufort by Ron Leshem. I read it on tablet because I couldn't get a hardback or a softback, but they're probably available secondhand somewhere. Anyway, stay tuned, keep reading, enjoy your books, and thanks for tuning in.